And the Hizmet movement is really inspired by Gulen's philosophy and the message that, you know, it isn't about the I, it's the I within the whole, and it's an organic, holistic system. And my name's Kathleen Moore, and I'm a professor of religious studies and chair of the religious studies department at UC Santa Barbara. The Hizmet movement is something that I've gotten to know over the past several years by taking trips to Turkey and by going to the Anatolian Festival, by visiting many of the schools and the hospitals and the dialogue centers. And, but what has been most valuable is meeting the people that I've known over the years that identify themselves with Hizmet, meaning service. And so they've really demonstrated in this encounter the values that are the core of Hizmet. And you know, those are about hospitality and you know, the genuine empathy and warmth that I've experienced with my relationships that are growing with people who identify with the Hizmet movement really have influenced the way I view it, and that I can see that it's going to have a lasting impact, because Hizmet is really something that demonstrates what's universal about Islam for the members of the Hizmet movement, that there are universal values that you find in other faith traditions as well. And for instance, if I might say, I am the board of directors president of a nonprofit organization in Santa Barbara, which is called the Interfaith Initiative. And so we get into interfaith dialogue with many groups. And I find that the Hizmet movement is the one that has been the most sustained group that is committed to genuine dialogue, to really talking about all of it, not just the best parts of the tradition, but every part of the tradition, and connecting what that means for their lived experience. Commitments to taking care of people, to disaster relief, to feeding people. I've been invited to people's homes for Ramadan dinner, and it's, you know, when we engage with dialogue at that level, at the personal level, in people's homes, and not just at formal luncheons or friendship dinners or talks, that really true dialogue happens. And so, you know, I think that they've really got something in the Hizmet movement. Obviously, Fethullah Gulen has had a great impact on young and middle-class Turks and Muslims, that he is able to inspire the growth of so many schools, and to inspire people who are in the business world to be able to go out and volunteer and also contribute, not just of their money, but of their time in you know, promoting the ends of their charities. The Hizmet movement represents Islam in the sense that the members who identify with the Hizmet movement are really inspired and motivated for community service and for their professional lives from the values that they locate in Islam. And some are very universal values, like the concept that God is merciful. So they represent Islam in the sense that these kinds of things that are not specific only to Islam, but that they have in common with other faiths, are very important. And that becomes a basis for the dialogue. And in the interfaith movement, there's a man named Christer Stendel who was a Lutheran bishop who was located in Stockholm for many years. But at the end of his life, he came to the United States and taught at Brandeis University. And he established 3 rules of interfaith understanding, which I think are very important. And the third rule is one that's called pious envy. And his point was to say, you may see something in another person's faith that you really like, but you're not allowed to appropriate that and make it your own. You need to respect boundaries. And in other words, if you see something in another faith tradition that you like, you can admire it, but don't try to adopt it and claim it as your own. And that is really, I think, the basis for a lot of mutual respect between religious traditions. And what I really like about the Hizmet movement is that I see that demonstrated in their approach, is that there is a recognition, of the universal things that we all have in common, but then there are certain things that are specific to Islam that when I go on the trips, to Turkey, for example, I see and admire, but I've learned how to live with the ambiguity, the desire to want to have that for myself, but not to pursue that, to respect that it has its place and its time for a reason. And for an example of that is to go to Turkey, like to go to Konya, which is a really beautiful city, with the Seljuk Empire and the history there, and to go to Rumi's tomb and watch as worshippers go through Rumi's tomb and the great devotion that they show and the whirling dervishes and so forth. That is specifically, a manifestation of Islam. And it's something I admire and I'm drawn to, but and I know that there are other pilgrimages around the world where, the same kind of devotion or similar devotion is demonstrated. But this is something in my mind that creates an impression that this is what Islam is really about. And so that's what Pacifica Institute and the Hizmet movement have given to me, is to be able to experience that for myself, to remember, to be reminded of that rule of pious envy. This is something that is valuable, I see in another religion. It's not part of my own, but I've been blessed to be able to witness it and to be able to empathize. A key difference between the Hizmet movement and other social movements in the Muslim world, the Mediterranean region and so on, is that the Hizmet movement really is dedicated to dialogue across boundaries. And the Hizmet movement doesn't serve just Muslims. It's there to serve the needs of the world. So in disaster relief, there's never a second thought given to where they're going to go. They go where they're needed. In education, as I said, they educate the whole person, and it doesn't matter whether the person's Muslim or not. And the Hizmet movement is really inspired by Gulen's philosophy and the message that, it isn't about the I, it's the I within the whole, and it's an organic, holistic system. And so there's a real conscious emphasis placed on how the actions of individual members of the Hizmet movement have ramifications for the rest of the world. I was really impressed visiting Hizmet schools in Turkey, even in places that were far from city centers. They would build these enormous and well-appointed schools, and it was clear that there was a lot of money donated to create these schools that were then used to promote science and technology and mathematics, and subjects that are really important for an educated person, and that they made this education available to all regardless of their income level and their ability to pay for it. So sometimes, it's private schools are pushing the envelope and challenge national schools to be able to keep up. And some of the places we visited in Turkey were of that model. They were really kind of on the cutting edge and, shamed the national schools to be able to try to meet the new bar that they had set. Charitable activities of a group that serves people regardless of their faith tradition is really, the model. I think that being able to give charity or to give disaster relief where it's needed is really, the highest priority. And when we break up into our own ethnic or religious or national groups, then we're really dividing rather than uniting. And so it does no good for a Muslim to criticize a Muslim organization because they're serving those beyond the Muslim community. It's counterproductive.